Bill Shorten is the Minister for Workplace Relations and he joins us now from Canberra. Mr Shorten, good morning to you. As you know, Craig Thomson says this report by KPMG vindicates him. Do you agree?
Good morning, Michael. The report, I think, is disappointing in that it reveals that the Fair Work Australia regulator, in my words, underestimated and was underprepared for the scale of the inquiries to be taken. So that's no good. But having said that, the report is also a pretty honest look at what needs to be done. For viewers, there's three features to it. I think one is it's found findings where the report could have been done better or more professionally. The second part of it is it's made recommendations to improve the processes and to learn the lessons from this. And thirdly, it's also clear that there's been no political interference. In terms of your question about what happens at the next stage, there was always going to be an inquiry stage. That took too long. An investigation stage, that's taken too long. The next stage is the courts, and I'm not going to second guess people's legal arguments for the courts. But
what do you think of Craig Thomson coming out, many would argue quite brazenly, at Parliament House last night and saying, well, essentially he feels he's in the clear?
Well, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I have to say that the opposition shouldn't be let off here too, if you want to talk about conduct. On the 23rd of May, Mr Abbott said he thought that the report was an excellent report. The same with the opposition spokesperson earlier in May. They thought it was an excellent report. Now they're saying it's a terrible report. I mean, the thing is that everyone here will use this to push their own agenda. What I'm interested in is making sure that for one part of one union, that the members of that union are confident that the union's back on the straight and narrow, that it's acting in the interest of members. The report does make serious and constructive recommendations about the lessons learned for this unprecedented inquiry. I mean, I try and encapsulate what the report tells me, and what it tells me is that when the first allegations arose, the investigative response was one of not being sufficiently prepared to understand the scope of it. If you like, they looked at the iceberg but weren't prepared to deal with the whole of the iceberg and what was required. That's why it took so long.
Now, the KPMG study didn't look at the findings or didn't query the findings of the Fair Work Australia probe into the Health Services Union. All this, of course, has renewed attention on those findings that Craig Thomson misused more than $500,000 of Health Services Union money. Do you believe him when he says it wasn't him?
Oh, what I believe is not relevant to this. What people, I believe, want is to be confident that if the independent regulator doing an investigation is found to have taken too long, what are the lessons there which we then fix for the future? I don't think these inquiries happen every day or every week or every month, but there are lessons. I certainly don't agree with the opposition's approach. They've managed to write a recommendation which doesn't exist in any of the recommendations and said, get rid of the independent umpire here. We don't agree with that. We think that there are lessons. The report, as I said at the outset of this interview, was disappointing. In terms of who's right and who's wrong, these matters will be tested through legal argument appropriately. No one suggested that this report was the full tribunal of evidence, and I think that everyone's best served, most particularly the low-paid members of this union, by having the court process finished. This has taken too long, and I'm not going to say or do anything which damages the ability of people to have their arguments heard and for members of that union to finally get to the facts and get back on track.
Do you ever foresee a situation, Bill Shorten, of Craig Thomson being welcomed back into the Labor Party fold?
Well, let's not go to what happens in the court case. Everyone seems to want people like myself to be judge and jury and get out the crystal ball. I won't do that. People have got their rights. The government all along had said there was no political interference, and this was a report done by an independent regulator. There was no political interference. KPMG is most clear on that matter. There was no interference. Now, the opposition's been defaming the government and asserting all sorts of cover-ups and conspiracies. There was none, and this report confirms that. What has happened is that the regulator was underprepared for the size of the task, the admittedly unprecedented task, but they were underprepared for it. There are lessons to be learned here. We've said that we will implement all the recommendations full stop, and in fact, not that people will have had time to perhaps dissect every part of the report, but some of the recommendations KPMG have proposed, we already put into the Parliament 3 months ago. Also, I have to say, we're the only government in the history of the Commonwealth who has put an administrator into the union, so we're fixing that structure.
Okay. Yep.
So I think we've done a bit so far, Michael.
Yeah, well, our time is out. Bill Shorten, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.